It gives me great pleasure, and it is an honor to introduce the speaker of the hour. Meantime, I should find my glasses.
Coach, your phone is still connected. Yeah, hold on.
May I have your attention, please?
We're good.
It is indeed an honor and a great pleasure to have this opportunity to introduce the speaker of the hour. He is an avid and prolific advocate for justice. He is truly a soldier on the battlefield, working constantly for justice. He has come to us before, and we truly enjoyed his presentation. So today we look forward to hearing him again. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Larry Hammond.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
How are y'all doing today?
Good, yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
And you enjoying your meal today? Give the hands that prepared the food, give them a big hand today. And let's give the committee that organized this program, this Juneteenth program, a big hand today. Give them all the help. I don't know all the names, but I can say the committee, so that includes everybody that helped today. And I'm glad to be here. I was asked to come and say a few words about Juneteenth. Just let me say, Happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth, everybody. And on this Sunday, June 22nd, we are celebrating the Juneteenth holiday, which became a holiday in our lifetime.
Yeah.
There always was a Juneteenth. In fact, I can remember when there wasn't a Martin Luther King holiday. How many can remember that? When there wasn't a Martin Luther King holiday. I remember the only holiday we used to have was Columbus Day. There used to be a Columbus Day parade out here. And then in the middle of the 60s, black people in Newark got together and said, wait a minute, we got some heroes too. And there was a Christmas Addicts Day. How many remember Christmas Addicts Day? See? There was a Christmas Addicts Day parade. And the Christmas Addicts Day parade became became the Black History Month parade. And then later on in time, after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Dr. King's wife, Coretta Scott King, and Stevie Wonder. How many of y'all remember Stevie Wonder? Give Stevie Wonder a big hand. I know he put a smile on some people's faces. I love his music. Stevie Wonder played a leading role in getting Dr. King's birthday made into a national holiday. The holiday is not actually on his birthday, which is January 15th. It's on the third Monday of every January. And so we had Martin Luther King Day. And then sometime, I would say, after the 2000s, people began to talk about Juneteenth. Now, some of you, if you're from the South or the West, you know about Juneteenth. But Juneteenth wasn't that strong up here in the North. It was strong in the South because, why? It originated in Texas, in the South. In fact, Texas was the last state of the Confederacy to surrender. The last battle of the Civil War was fought in Texas. And this is why when you hear about Juneteenth, they say, well, what is Juneteenth? That's when General Granger came into Galveston, Texas, and informed, this is what they say on TV, and they informed the black people that they were free because Abraham Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation 2 years earlier. Now, if you just listen to folks on TV, you think that Granger rode into Galveston by himself, got on the steps of the courthouse, and told the people, you're free now. First of all, the black people knew that they had been emancipated. They knew that already. They knew it everywhere that we had been enslaved. The problem was that Texas did not want to let my people go. So Granger didn't come into Galveston by himself. He came in with 10,000 Union troops. You don't know that part, do you? Yeah. I'm going to tell you another part you don't know. They were black troops. Oh. General Granger rode into Galveston at the head of 10,000 black Union soldiers to literally enforce the emancipation. They told Granger that they didn't want him to come in yet because the crops had to be picked, the cotton had to be picked. No, really. They did not want to let people go. So Granger came in with 10,000 colored troops, and there was still a battle. It wasn't in Galveston, it was in another town, not too far away. The last battle, the last fight in the Civil War took place in Texas because Texas did not want to surrender. Texas did not surrender until late in June of 1865. So people were informed about the Emancipation Proclamation. Now I want to know how many children in here. Children, raise your hand. Anybody still in school, raise your hand. Let me ask the children in here, how many of you have read the Emancipation Proclamation? See, now, this is not right, y'all. If we send our children to 8 years of elementary school, 4 years of high school, they got a Martin Luther King holiday, a Black History Month, and Juneteenth. My goodness, shouldn't they have at least read the Emancipation Proclamation one time? One time. One time. Look, we didn't even celebrate Juneteenth in the 1950s when I was a student at South 17th Street School right up here by Westside Park. But we read the Emancipation Proclamation. We had to memorize some of it. We had to memorize and speak up and say to the class the preamble to the Constitution. We had to memorize and stand up and say to the class the Gettysburg Address. How many of y'all have to say Gettysburg Address? Raise your hand when you was in school. I would bet today that that is not required of any of our children. And this is why you have to be involved in the education of your children. You got people running, you just had a school board election in Newark. Next time you have a school board election and candidates come in here and they start talking, you tell them, what are you going to do to make sure our children get at least as good an education as we got? We got all these black elected officials. There wouldn't be no black elected officials if it hadn't been for black people's struggle. And they should be legislating and doing things to ensure that our children understand their history, their legacy, and their responsibility. So Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation in September of 1862 to become effective when? Who knows when it became effective? When did it become effective? Come on.
January 1, 1863.
That's right. January 1st, give him a hand. January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation becomes effective. On December 31st, black people in the North and the South went to church on the night of the 31st to watch and pray. To watch night. That's where watch night comes from. Many of y'all don't know. That is the origin, because we've detached it from its practical meaning, right? It just has a spiritual meaning. But watch night came from black people going to church December 31st, December 31st, 1862, to tarry at the altar until midnight to see if, in fact, the Emancipation Proclamation, the promise of it was going to be kept. But the Emancipation Proclamation, contrary to popular belief, did not free all black people. Did y'all know that? Because I know you were told, like I was told, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and the Emancipation Proclamation was freed the slaves. First of all, let me say this. If I don't say it nowhere else, I'm going to say it here. Black people, we freed ourselves. We freed ourselves. Father Abraham didn't free us. We freed ourselves. Now, why do I say that? I'm not just saying that to be funny. Listen. The Emancipation Proclamation was a wartime measure. Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation because the North is not winning the Civil War. In the early battles between the Confederacy and the Union, the Confederacy with fewer men and less resources were defeating the Union forces. And why were they defeating the Union forces? Because a lot of the men who had been pressed into service in the Union was not down with the cause. How many of y'all saw that movie, The Gangs of New York?
Yeah.
You remember The Gangs of New York?
Yeah.
There's a scene in The Gangs of New York where Irish immigrants are arriving, literally getting off the boat to come to the United States. 1 minute they're getting off the boat, you see them going to this building, and the next minute they're in Union uniform. A lot of them said they didn't come here to fight for Negro freedom. In fact, do you know why black people live in Harlem today? Because we used to live downtown where the World Trade Center was. In the mid-1860s, during the Civil War, when Lincoln had to institute a draft to get soldiers to fight, the Irish and others burned down downtown Manhattan. That's where we live. It's called the draft right. Take out your phone. You don't have to believe me. Take out your phone and look it up. I stand on truth. I'm not going to go anywhere and tell my people something that's not true. They would rather burn the town down than go fight. So Lincoln wasn't winning. So he issues the Emancipation Proclamation and offers freedom to those black men who are in, listen, the states, counties, and parishes that are in rebellion. They're all listed there in the Constitution. You want to see what the Confederacy is? Read the Emancipation Proclamation. All the states, the counties, and the parishes that are in rebellion are listed there. And he offers freedom to them. it doesn't free all enslaved people. You know why? Because slavery was in the North. New Jersey was in the Union. But the slaves in New Jersey were not free. There were the so-called border states between the North and the South. They all had slavery. They were permitted to keep their slaves because they joined the Union. I know y'all didn't think about it. I didn't think about it either. I learned this. Look, when I was a little boy, how many remember a TV program called Wanted Dead or Alive? Oh, you remember that, right? With the guy that had, he wore his Confederate cap, and he had a sawed-off shotgun that he wore in a holster on his hip. And my grandfather used to say, that's a bad man, because he killed everybody. You know, shotgun, buckshot go everywhere.
That was Chuck Connors.
That was the rifleman.
Yeah.
This was another one.
Chuck Connors.
No, the rifleman was Chuck Connors. But anyway, listen. I was a little boy when I saw this program on TV. I wanted one of them Confederate caps. I'm a little black boy in Newark, New Jersey. And I told my mother I wanted one of them Confederate caps, Johnny Red. Johnny Yuma was the name of the character. He was Johnny Yuma. He was a rebel and he wandered alone. That was in the theme song. I told my mother to take me down to Woolworths. Y'all remember what Woolworths was on Broad Market? She took me down to Woolworths and bought me a toy Johnny Red rifle and a Johnny Red cap. And there I was, black as night, walking around with the cap of the Confederate soldiers on my head. The cap of the soldiers who were going to lay down their lives to literally preserve the institution of slavery and keep us enslaved in perpetuity. Those are the words of the laws. And if anybody thinks it wasn't about white supremacy, all you have to, don't take my word for it, all you have to do is read the declarations of secession of each Confederate state. They seceded from the Union one by one. And in each declaration of secession, they say, we're leaving to preserve white supremacy. Because they thought, listen, they thought they were the actual inheritors of the legacies of the founders of the country. Why? Because the founders of the countries were slave masters. Washington was a slave master. In fact, Washington was the biggest slave master in Virginia. When he married, he had 150 slaves. When he married Martha, she had 150 slaves. And together at the time of their marriage, they had 300 slaves on 6 plantations. When Washington died, if you read his will, he had almost as much land as the King of England. He was a slave master. Jefferson was a slave master. Y'all know Jefferson was a slave master. Sally Hemings, that's right. Kept her in a room, had a hole dug in the wall, and put her in a secret room in the house. So she could always be there for his needs. She wasn't but a girl, 13 years, maybe not even 13, when he took her. Sally Hemings. The first 7 or 8 presidents of the United States, all slave masters. This is a country built on slavery. So, getting back to the Emancipation Proclamation, the Union wasn't winning. The Union had far more soldiers than the Confederacy. Initially, McClellan was the supreme commander of the Union forces. He had 100,000 troops camped out on the Potomac. They wasn't fighting. Lincoln was sending them telegrams. When you going to fight? When you going to fight? Is he like, no, because they didn't want to divided families. I mean, divided them. You literally had families that had one brother fighting for the Union and one brother fighting for the Confederacy. And so finally, Lincoln fires McClellan, who was from New Jersey, by the way. He fires McClellan, guess who he hired? U.S. Grant, Ulysses S. Grant. And Ulysses S. Grant, he hires a fellow named William Tecumseh Sherman. And then Lincoln, in the summer, he issues the first draft of the Emancipation Proclamation to test the waters. And another draft in September that becomes effective January 1st, 1863. And it offered freedom only to those black men that could escape from the plantation, cross the battle lines, and then join the Union Army. And they joined. 220,000 black men joined the Union forces. The Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, I think they call it the Merchant Marine then, and so on and so forth. 186,000 joined the Army. And they turned the tide of the war. Y'all saw that movie Glory, right? Yeah. You saw the movie Glory. You know, recently I went to Pennington, New Jersey. How many of y'all know where Pennington is? Pennington is a little town between Trenton and Princeton. And in Pennington, the people have a cemetery there. You know what the name is? The African Cemetery. That's the name of the cemetery. It's been the name of the cemetery since the end of the Civil War. You know why? Because the black people of Pennington went to buy land to bury their black Union soldiers because the white Union soldiers, I didn't say the Confederates, the white Union soldiers and the black Union soldiers couldn't be buried in the same cemetery because the cemeteries were segregated. Yeah. The cemeteries were segregated. Y'all hear what I said? The cemeteries were segregated. You had one in New Jersey. You had one in Newark. Guess where it is? New Jersey Pack.
That's right.
The New Jersey Pack. Did y'all know when they started building the pack, they started digging the foundation? What did they dig up? A cemetery. It was the cemetery where the enslaved black people and Native Americans were buried. Y'all run down there every day. Is this show and that show? You don't even know that that path was on consecrated ground. And we made them stop the construction. POP, People's Organization for Progress, when we heard that they had found the cemetery, we went down there and stopped the construction. We protested because the law requires, because this happens regularly. When they have a construction site and they come up on the cemetery, those remains have to be interred, again, according to the law. And we had made Pat put up a little monument. I don't know if y'all remember. They used to have a little monument. It was a white arch that stood out on the plaza. And if you went up to the arch, and it had a glass in the arch, and it had all the names in there of the black enslaved people and Native Americans that were buried there. The arch is gone.
That's right.
Ain't nobody said nothing.
That's right.
The arch is gone. Nobody said nothing.
That's right.
One of the ones that was buried in there was an African named Cujo Jack. Cujo Jack, yes. His African name, I think, was Bustamante, his African name, but he was a slave. And you know what happened during the American Revolution? You know, everybody wasn't with the American Revolution. Only about 10% of the colonists supported the American Revolution. Did y'all know that? No, y'all thought everybody was like, oh, freedom, right? Freedom, right? No. Them people were like, no, we're not fighting the British. Tory corner. The Tories were the Americans that still supported the British. See, history is all around you, brothers and sisters. We in the vortex of history all the time. Cujo Jack. So what happened was a lot of well-to-do American colonists wouldn't join Washington's Revolutionary Army. So they did what? They sent their slaves to fight for them. You didn't know that, did you? Yes. 5,000 black troops joined the American Revolutionary Army. Many of them were forced to go and fight because their masters told them to go and fight. I'm going to tell you something else you don't know, because it's not in the popular narrative. Many black people fought for the British.
That's right.
You know why they fought for the British? Because the British offered them freedom.
That's right.
Washington did not offer freedom to his black troops until he couldn't recruit no more white troops. The British been offered freedom. And then when the British lost, guess what happened? They took their black troops and took them where? They took them to Canada. Many of the black people in Canada today are the descendants of the black men that fought for the British in places like Nova Scotia and other places. You didn't know that, did you?
Yes, I did.
Some of y'all did. I didn't know it. Somebody had to teach it to me. You know, I was a little boy, you know, Christopher Columbus Day would come, I was cutting out little Ninas, Pintas, and Santa Maria, putting them in the window, not knowing those were slave ships. Columbus took slaves on his first voyage. Not the third, but the first voyage. Because they enslaved the indigenous people. The Carib, the Arawak, and the Taino were the indigenous peoples of the Caribbean. Columbus took slaves. There was 100 years of indigenous slavery before there was African slavery in the Western Hemisphere. And then they brought us. Because the Indians was like, no, we're not doing that. They knew where to go. They knew how to fight. They knew they knew the land. So just going back, I know I'm getting far afield here and I'm probably putting people to sleep. But just going back to 220,000 black men joined the Union Army. Do you know that they distinguished themselves so well, acquitted themselves so well on the battlefield? 36 black soldiers received the Congressional Medal of Honor. I bet you can't name one of them. You can't name one of them. But you didn't know. That's not your fault. That wasn't in your social studies textbook in elementary school. Because they didn't want you to know that. They wanted you to know Abraham Lincoln freed the slave. That you had no agency. You had no self-determination. They wanted you to know that. So we have today, it turned, when we joined the Civil War, it turned the tide of the Civil War. And this is the price that was paid for our freedom. Do you know that more Americans were killed in the Civil War than Americans were killed in World Wars I, World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam combined? Nearly 1 million Americans died in the Civil War. That's what it took to end slavery. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that kind of talk, but what can I tell you? All you got to do is go down there to Arlington Cemetery. Arlington Cemetery was Robert E. Lee's plantation. Did y'all know that? Yes. Arlington Cemetery was Robert E. Lee's plantation. And when Lee lost the war, they took his land. And they said, we're turning it into a cemetery for our soldiers. Yes. Nearly 1 million died. So many people died. Do you know that many religious people thought it was the war of the apocalypse? They would write home to their mothers, the young men, say, I'm standing in rivers of blood. You know, why did Lincoln give the Gettysburg Address? Because Gettysburg was a battlefield. Do you know how many people were killed in one day in Gettysburg? 25,000. And in those days, they didn't have these machine guns like we have now, and bazookas and all that stuff. They had single-shot rifles, most of them. A few of them had repeater rifles. Repeater rifles weren't invented around the time of the Civil War. But most of them had single-shot rifles. That's why when you saw a rifle, it had what on the end? A bayonet, like a spear. Because once you fire that shot, you might not have time to load up again. You have to stick them. You know, you're trying to keep your life. So many of the men died in hand-to-hand combat. 60,000 black soldiers died during the Civil War. 100,000 were wounded. And do you know the origins of Memorial Day? The origins of Memorial Day go back to a black celebration called Decoration Day.
That's right.
Am I telling the truth, brother? See, you don't know these things come and go. You think they have nothing to do with you. They have everything to do with you. In fact, when you dig deep enough, there's no aspect of life that African Americans and black people were not involved in. The black soldiers were honored by their communities in Decoration Day. The black people would come out and march in formation. You can see pictures of this. I've seen pictures. And they weren't soldiers. The people, to honor the soldiers, would line up and march like soldiers. To honor. What do we do to honor our soldiers who lay down their life? What do we do here in Newark? Has anybody ever gone and put some flowers on the grave of a soldier that died in the Civil War, and particularly a black soldier that died in the Civil War? That's how you got free.
Wow. Yeah. Amen.
That's how. And now, what I would urge you to do, there are men that do reenactments. They dress up. They have the real uniforms that black soldiers had at that time, and they dress up. We had one at one of our marches, and he had the bayonet, and he gave me the bayonet. Man, that thing was heavy. He gave it to my arm dropped. They had to march with it. You know what the thing too was? I have to just say this. The black soldiers in the Union Army, they faced racism in the Union Army. They didn't get equal wages. They didn't get full uniforms. Some of them didn't get boots. And a lot of them, to add insult to injury, a lot of them got weapons that didn't even work. But they fought anyway. They fought in Antietam. They fought in St. Petersburg. In Antietam, 30,000 men fell in a day. And you know, many times when the Confederates took the black soldiers prisoners, there was no prison, there was no prison camp. They killed the black soldiers. Look up Fort Pillow. They used to have a rallying cry, remember Fort Pillow, because they killed all the black prisoners that they had taken captive. I just say all that to say, brothers and sisters, this is the price of freedom. You know, when we have these holidays, you know, that's right, freedom is not free. And the freedom that we have today was paid with lives, with treasure, with sacrifice that cannot even be imagined. And there were women in the Civil War too. Harriet Tubman wasn't just Harriet Tubman, she was General Tubman. Did y'all know that?
Yes.
Harriet Tubman led troops in the battle. Harriet Tubman not only freed people, she was a spy for the Union Army because she knew the land. She used to have 6 shooters on both hips. How many know about Robert Smalls? Robert Smalls was a slave in the Confederate Army. the, supply cleaning and all that, one night, Robert Smalls stole a whole battleship by himself. Stole it right out of Richmond Harbor and sailed it all the way to Baltimore Harbor to the Northern Lines. Know why? Because he learned the Morse code with the lights. So every time he would get near, Confederate military forces, he would signal that this was a Confederate ship and to let us have free passage. Took a whole ship, been a slave, became a congressman during the Reconstruction period. So I tell you this to say that we must remember those of our ancestors that sacrificed for us. That's the debt. That's the price we had to pay. But there's a debt that's owed to us. And that's the debt of the labor that was stolen from our ancestors for more than 400 years. This country is the richest, most powerful country in the world today. You know why it's rich? Our ancestors made it rich. Enslaved people, the wealth that came from slavery. Listen, in 1860, the biggest business in America, bigger than industry, bigger than commerce, and bigger than banking, was the business of slavery. And slavery was everywhere. And slave labor built everything. The White House was built with slave labor. The Capitol building, the one that you see in the pictures with the round dome, was built with slave labor. It was the capital not just of the United States, it was the capital of slavery. And that's why, to this day, the People's Organization for Progress says reparations are owed to African Americans in this country for the labor that was stolen from our ancestors. So, the price that was paid, the debt that was owed, and lastly, the struggle is going on, brothers and sisters. This struggle never ended. After the Civil War was the post-Reconstruction period, where they tried to overturn the gains of the Civil War. The Klan literally created 1865. And then Jim Crow segregation. 245 years of slavery, 100 years of apartheid called Jim Crow segregation, and racial oppression that we endure today. And there are people in power now, and I ain't scared to say it, it's Trump and the MAGA Republicans. They want to take us back to the 19th century. But I don't know about you. I ain't going back to nothing without a fight. We sacrificed and gave everything for the gains that we have. We're going to fight these people. And I'm here to tell you, people are full of despair. Woe is me. What am I going to look at Trump? Every morning we wake up, he's doing something else. Let me tell you something. We endured, we survived Washington, we survived Jefferson, we survived Jackson, we survived Nixon, we survived Reagan, we gonna survive Donald Trump. We gonna survive Donald Trump. He's not gonna break our souls. Not gonna happen. So I just close with this. We gotta keep fighting. We just finished a primary election. And although he didn't win, I think Ross Baraka did a great job running for governor of the state of New Jersey. He beat people. There were 6 candidates. He came in number 2. He beat people that had more money than him, that had the support of the Democratic Party. He won his city. He won his county. He won Union County. And he got 170,000 votes statewide. I think he did a pretty good job. I'm not saying. But that's, the primary's done. Now we got to look forward to the general election in November. And we got all summer. We should be doing voter registration. All summer. And start with the people in your family. And some of y'all got to stand up now. because I think it's the internet, I think it's other things, but there are people in our own families talking about voting don't do nothing. Vote don't count. No, I don't vote. I ain't gonna vote. We gotta start having a discussion with our people. Some of us just, we just step back and let it go. No, you got to argue with people. In this room now, I went to Princeton University. I graduated from Larry Ham off of 12th Street, South 17th Street School, Arts High School. My mother was a seamstress and my father was a truck driver. And I got to Princeton University and I graduated. But did I graduate from Princeton because I was the smartest or I was the handsomest? No. I was able to go to Princeton because some black people that I didn't even know kicked the doors of that university open so that I could go there and get an education. And all of us in here that have college degrees today, we have those degrees because of those people whose names are not in the history book. I'm old enough to remember to come downtown Newark, to go to the Howard Savings Bank or First National Bank. There wasn't even no black tellers, much less no black bank managers. I remember when black people couldn't eat at the restaurant in Bamberger's, and the building is still there. You could buy stuff, but you could not eat in Bamberger's cafeteria. I can remember my lifetime when there was the Paramount Theater and the RKO Proctor and the Loews and the Bradford and the Adams. Black people could not sit in the mezzanine of those theaters. We could only sit in the balcony. You know what I'm talking about. If we came downtown. Most of the time we didn't even come downtown. We went to the National Theater that was up there on Belmont Avenue, where the Masonic Temple used to be. The National that was next to the Tasty Bread Factory. See, I remember these things. I remember when it was like a big thing for me to get in the car with Mr. Freddie, and Mr. Freddie would take me to the White Castle down there on Elizabeth Avenue. When the waitresses came out in roller skates, they didn't even hire black people at the White Castle. The first civil rights demonstration in Newark was at the White Castle.
And looking at a person that was
That's right. That's right. That's right. CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, had a demonstration at the White Castle. I can remember we didn't have no black teachers. I went to all the South 17th Street School, K through 8. I didn't have one black teacher in the classroom. The only black teacher I had was the speech teacher. Because when I was a child, I had a speech impediment. And she was a circulating teacher. She'd go from school to school. And she would come twice a month to my school to give me speech therapy. There was an organization called ONE, the Organization of Negro Educators, that had to campaign to get black teachers and black administrators in the Newark school. This is not what I read in the book. This is what I know, what I experienced in my lifetime. We getting ready to come up on the anniversary of the Newark Rebellion. Don't call it a riot. It was not a riot. It was a rebellion against oppression. They killed that cab. They tried to kill that cab driver, John Smith, right there on the corner of Fairmount and Springfield Avenue, where the Metroplex Theater is now. They took him into the police station up here on 17th Avenue. And back then the projects were still there. Hayes Homes, Scudder Homes. People could look right down. They saw the police drag him in there. They thought he wasn't going to come out alive. There was a demonstration in front of the police station. The police came out and attacked the demonstrators, and that's what started the rebellion in 1967. And I'm going to tell you something. Ken Gibson had run for mayor in 1966 and didn't get elected. I believe if we had not had that rebellion in 1967, he wouldn't have been elected in 1970. Yes, the rebellion was destructive. Yes, there was a lot of property damage. But I'm going to tell you something else. There was a positive change inside the mind and psychology of black people. After that rebellion, we wasn't saying colored anymore in my house. We wasn't saying Negro in my house.
Right.
We were saying black, and we were black people. And then we were proud to be black people. When James Brown came out with that record, say it loud, I'm black and I'm black. Say it loud. Say it loud. Say it again. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hale,
Yes.
I am from North Carolina. I grew up in the segregated South.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you. And you survived.
I survived, and I'm here.
I'm from North Carolina too.
Right, North Carolina.
Wilson.
I'm from North Carolina. Tomahawk, North
I
Carolina.
done started something.
Larry, we got a plaque there, man, and that's plantation, right there from the project.
All right.
Plaque, you know that plaque.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Talks about your education.
Never give
And so we take this opportunity to thank Mr. Larry Ham for sharing his knowledge with us on this Juneteenth celebration.
Yes.
Let's give him another hand. At this time, I'm going to ask Brother Harmon to come forward, and he's going to sing the song Redemption.
Oh, hello, everyone. This song was written by great reggae artist Bob Marley.
Yes,
Redemption song.
yes.
Oh, pirates, yes, they rob, so like to the merchant ship, minutes after they took I
Yes.
from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong
Yes.
by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation, triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I'll ever have, redemption song, redemption song. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, for none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I'll ever have, redemption song, redemption song. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, for none of them can stop the time. How long shall they keep our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever have, redemption song, redemption song, redemption song. Thank you.